Speaking of Trump, he will headline tonight in Milwaukee. And joining us now from the site of the RNC there in Wisconsin, national political correspondent for Politico, Meredith McGraw. She is the author of the upcoming book, Trump in Exile. And Meredith, you have reporting on how former President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance's relationship went from sour to now partners sharing the ticket together. Tell us about that.
Well, let's go back to 2016 when J.D. Vance wrote Hillbilly Elegy. That really served as a kind of guide to the white working class aggrieved voters that Donald Trump appealed to, and really helped to translate to a lot of people the political base that Donald Trump was tapping into. But back then, J.D. Vance wasn't so much a fan of Donald Trump. He had called him a liar, and he was one of those faces of the Never Trump movement. But flash forward to the 2022 midterm elections, and J.D. Vance made appeals to Donald Trump. He ran for Senate in Ohio. It was a crowded primary field, and he was able to win Donald Trump over for a few reasons. One, he directly took on those criticisms he once had of Donald Trump. But he also had some really powerful allies behind him, people like Donald Trump Jr. and Peter Thiel, who made appeals to Trump on his behalf. And I had some reporting in my book about some of the encounters that Trump and Vance had, whether it was at his golf course in Palm Beach, or it was, other instances where Trump thought that Vance was his guy and ultimately endorsed him. But it really is a remarkable arc for J.D. Vance to go from once a liberal darling to now the vice presidential nominee for Donald Trump, and somebody who is really seen as the MAGA heir apparent now.
Meredith, so many different reasons have been cited as the reason why Donald Trump decided to go with J.D. Vance, that he was a true populist. He liked his foreign policy. He liked his defenses on television. But then there's probably the most attractive reason of all. J.D. Vance recanted and surrendered, in a sense, to Donald Trump. What do you think is the reason that Trump, at the end of the day, decided to go with him?
Well, I think Trump has always loved to win over his former critics. We've seen that time and time again with people in the Republican Party who once denounced him and now have become some of his biggest cheerleaders. But I think with this pick, it really came down to a few things. And one, I think they have a strong personal rapport. And I think Donald Trump was looking at this moment, especially just in what's transpired in the past few weeks, and is looking for somebody who is going to push his MAGA movement for the decades to come. And J.D. Vance is incredibly young. He's 39 years old. He's turning 40 in just a few weeks. And at a moment where the conversation, the national conversation, swirls so much about age, questions of age, I do think that was a factor in it, too. And then going back, of course, to some of the people who have been supportive of J.D. Vance. Donald Trump Jr., Trump's son, was incredibly supportive, as were other people like Tucker Carlson and others who played a role in helping Vance get his endorsement back in 2022.
National political correspondent for Politico, Meredith McGraw. Thank you very much. Meredith's new book, Trump in Exile, is set to be released on August 6th. And Jonathan Lemire, you mentioned Vance's beard. And as the New York Times took a deep dive into that aspect of the Vance candidacy, as the Times notes, the Ohio Republican is the first major party nominee with facial hair in 75 years. The last bearded man elected president was Benjamin Harrison back in 1888. The last president with any facial hair whatsoever was William Howard Taft, elected in 1908. The last vice president with a mustache was Charles Curtis, who served alongside Herbert Hoover. And the last major party candidate to try to break that clean-shaven streak was Thomas E. Dewey, who had a dapper little caterpillar on his upper lip and ran unsuccessfully for the highest office in 1944 and 48. And as the Times notes, these days, facial hair is often seen as suspicious, particularly for someone seeking office. Quote, it didn't help that politicians lost their races and appeared to be experiencing something of a long, dark night of the soul, sometimes expressed by crises, by disappearing and then reappearing with beards. And we have one more honorable beard mention.
Oh,
I liked it, Richard. I liked it.
It may
was
come back,
okay.
Mika. It may come back.
No, I like your face. Okay.
Richard,
Jonathan
I mean,
Lemire.
very, very handsome either way, Richard.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I will note that there was some reporting about J.D. Vance's beard suggesting that actually Harry S. Truman had a beard, but they showed a picture. He was like a light goatee. It's like he just didn't shave for a weekend. That's all it was. So we're not going to go there.
He's busy.
No, and we should note, J.D. couldn't play for the Yankees, but we should note, Mika, there was some reporting that Donald Trump initially was very leery of the beard. He he doesn't like beards, doesn't like facial hair. We know he's so desperate for people to look the part, but he was convinced to look the other way here, and even once compared J.D. Vance's beard to one sported by, in his words, a young Abraham Lincoln. So, Haas, we have that to aspire to for the next time you go for it. Look at there. Look, now, we will say, look, 19th century presidents had the best style. And Mike Barnacle there and the mutton chops. Let's do that.
I'd take some of the hair, but I wouldn't put it on top of my head.
Spectacular.
Okay.
The resemblance uncanny.
Richard Haas. Thank you, Richard, very much. And still ahead on Morning Joe, one of our next guests says, one generation of Americans has had a stranglehold on the White House and won't let go. We'll talk about the impact of baby boomers on U.S. politics. That's next on Morning Joe. We will be right back.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.